Hello there, my name is Ismas. Welcome to Top Channel 101. So in this video, let us look at how to create this Amazon Echo in Blender. I chose this project as a way to introduce anyone who doesn't know how to use Blender to Blender, so that you can learn the basics, how the different tools work and the different tools you have access to. So this is going to be an intermediate level tutorial, or maybe even a beginner tutorial. We're going to cover how to model the object, how to add materials, how to UV unwrap it and add textures, so that we can add those icons you see here and even this logo. So we're going to cover some basic materials, some basic textures, some basic lighting and UV unwrapping. Though this is going to cover a lot of things, it may not cover everything. So that's why I would recommend you take my Blender course on that I have on Udemy. I will leave a link in the description if you want to check that out, and if you want to get an in-depth overview of the entire software, of the entire Blender application. For now, let's dive in and see how we can tackle this nightmare of a model. As you can see, creating these holes, and then the buttons look pretty simple, but the difficult part is going to be these holes here. Maybe that's what we should actually start with. So fire up Blender, create a new project, and let's go to top view and add a circle. So you can see there are quite a number of circles, a number of holes, so we can create a circle with a lot of vertices, something like 128. And so let's center this. Go to edit mode. So there are two ways to go to edit mode. You can hit tab on your keyboard or just go to this drop down menu. So let's go to that, and then you can see we have all the vertices selected, so we can hit E to extrude them in, just something like that. Then hit E again, extrude to about there, and hit E again, then merge center. So we have that. You can see the normals are flipped right now. That's why the mesh is a bit dark. So we can select all the vertices and hit Ctrl N, and then flip the normals, or recalculate the normals and then flip them. So what we want to do is create our first hole. So go to the top one, this one here, and what we can do is select that face and then hit I to insert that face. So we have that. Now if we delete that face, we get something like that, which is one hole. So we're going to be using subsurf modifier. As you can see, if you zoom in a bit, you can see these edges, all these holes are rounded. They're not very sharp as these ones. So if we add the subdivision modifier, we can get those rounded corners. But right now ours look more of an oval shape than a rounded rectangle. So for that we will add a few edge loops like that to have rounded corners like that. Maybe we can even just move them a little bit so that we have something like that. But that is just one hole. So how are we going to make the entire ring of those holes? So let's try and see how we can work this. So select these vertices, then select. So if you hold down Shift and Alt, you can select two. If you hold down Shift, you can select. You can do a multiple selection. If you hold down Alt and right select on any edge, you can select a loop connected to that edge. So holding down Shift and then Alt, you can select multiple loops, and then select that, so that we have this shape that has our that our first hole selected, then hit Ctrl I to select the inverse of our selection, and then hit X to delete all the vertices, but what our hole, and only remain with our hole. So you can see we have something like a needle. And so in Blender, what we can do, you can, if you go to edit mode and hit Alt R, you can spin the vertices. You can make duplicates of the vertices you have selected. As you can see, let's undo again. So if we select this vertex and then hit Alt R, you can see we can make a duplicate of that vertex. So, but that's not what we want. So, by the way, if you do this Alt R, you might notice that yours are connected. So if you don't have this selected, you will have a connected vertex. So it will make a duplicate of that selection while keeping everything connected to each other. So, but what we want to do is make a duplicate while make duplicates only instead of connected duplicates. So make sure that you have duplicates turned on. What you see right now is creating that rotation it's making the duplicates from rotating them from the center of our 3D cursor. So what we can, if you move the 3D cursor somewhere like this and do that, Alt R, you can see it makes the duplicates around, rotate around that 3D cursor. So what we can do is go back to edit mode and then go to vertex mode, select that center vertex, then hit Shift S to bring up this snap menu, and then snap the cursor to selected. So that is there. And now if we select that and hit R, you can see the duplicates are around the 3D cursor, which is our center of the object. But right now the duplicates are not enough. So you might also notice when you do yours for the first time, it will be the angle will be set to 90. So your duplicates will only be 90, like that. Actually, this is what we want because we want to eliminate the space between those duplicates, and we can use the mirror modifier to make copies of this section or pie. But let's try out 300. Let's see how this looks. I think it's good, but let's first try 3. No, let's go with that, because what I was going to do is do 360 and then increase the steps to make sure that we have all the gaps filled, and then delete the extra space, the extra duplicates, so that we only have 1/4 of what we have created. But I think 90 will work fine. Right now the steps are too many, so we can reduce them until we have the entire mesh connected. So 32 will be just fine, and that's what we have. But you see now we have this problem here that the mesh is also curving in. This is because these are still separate objects, as you see. So what we can do is select the entire object because we want to merge these vertices that are next to on top of each other, that are overlapping each other. So the way you do that, you just select the entire thing, right click, hit W on your keyboard to bring up this specials menu, and then remove doubles. So you can see what we have right now is a mess because the merge distance is too high, so you can reduce that. And you can also see how many vertices are being removed up here. So let's zoom in a bit. make sure you don't merge anything else that you don't want to merge. So let's see. So I think everything looks good. As you can see, we have got what we want. And now what we can do now, you can add a mirror modifier to make a mirror copy of the pie on the other side, and also we want that on the x axis. But you see, we still have these gaps here because we have duplicate vertices there. What we can do is move this mirror modifier up before the subsurf modifier, so that the subsurf modifier is applied after the mirror copies are merged to the original mesh. And you can see now we have that done. See, perfect. So now let's see how we can add these buttons. Let me make sure this is recording. Perfect. Okay, so let's look at how to add these buttons. So you can see these are circular objects. So what we can do is come in here. Let's see, what should we do? Let's first disable the subsurf and disable the mirror, and let's add a new circle object inside edit mode, because we want to add it, connect it to the other vertices. We won't need that many vertices. Let's say 12, and then so let's move this around to about that. Make sure these two vertices are center aligned to the middle edge. You see there. Now we can add, let's see how many vertices can we add. Let's add an edge loop there. So to add an edge loop, you can hit Ctrl R, and you can add the edge loops you want. So let's add maybe another one there. Now let's see how we are going to do this. So you can select two vertices and merge them together. So the way you do that is select the first vertex and then select the second vertex, and then hit Alt M. Then you can choose what kind of option you want to choose here: merge to the first or merge to the last. Because we want to keep the shape of our circle, we are merging to the last. So yes, so should we add a loop here? So let's merge this here, and maybe merge this to that. Let's try merging this to that. And okay, now let's delete these. So what we are doing, it seems random, but what we are doing is trying to merge, to connect the circle we have added to the original mesh. So as long as we get it there, you don't really have to follow the same steps I'm doing. So it's is it? Yeah, so we can merge that there and merge that side. So we have that connected. It's not perfect, but it will work. and that's the point we are going, and that's what we're going for. So we can now delete these vertices. So we have something like that, and I think we used a lot of vertices here. So what we can do is let's see if we can collapse that. So collapse that edge loop. Let's push that there. Maybe you can just, if you hit K on your keyboard, you will get the knife tool that you can use to cut between edges. So we have something like that. And I think we can merge some of these vertices as well. So we can, should we do that? Merge this. You can see we only have 4 buttons. We only have 3 things here. So the flow of the vertices in this area won't really matter that much. So that's why you see that I'm not really caring that much about that. So because if we add the mirror modifier and the subsurf modifier, you see it will still look perfect. So it will still look perfectly flat, and you can see we already have a duplicate of this circle this side. So we just need to move this to this end here, and we should be good to go. So let's disable this as well, and let's try this and see if I did this. If I select all these edges, hit Shift D to duplicate this selection so that I have that, and let me move my cursor to this, then that, then rotate negative 90 degrees so that we have that, because I just want to use this exact setup this side, and I don't want to do a lot of work. So I can do Ctrl M X to mirror that in the X-axis, and I think we don't need this extra shape here. So we can get rid of this here. Now we can start merging this. Yeah, I think now we can delete these faces. If you want, you can also come and remove. Let's first remove doubles and see. You can remove some of the extra vertices you see here if you want, but for this I think this will do. So we can turn this back on. You see we have our top part, and I think this is the hardest, this was the hardest part of this. So anything else is going to be quite simple to do. So if you want to add this middle hole, you just delete this vertex, or you just go to edge mode and use the circle select to select all the edges, and then hit W to bring this subdivide options, and then subdivide that. Then you can scale these to there, and now delete the center vertex, so you have something like that. Cursor to selected, then scale, so we have that. So to add the buttons, we can just go to the shape. We can should we apply that? I don't. Let's create the buttons as separate objects. So let's add a circle there. Make sure the vertices are few. Then scale this. Add the subsurf modifier. Then scale this to about that. Make sure it is centered into those circles. By the way, don't forget to subscribe or like the video to support the channel. It lets me know that you like these types of tutorials. So you can see the buttons are a bit pressed inside or a bit inset inside, so we can push this vertex a bit inside as well, maybe a bit more, then extrude again inside as well, then merge center, then we can select the outer edges, then extrude them as well. But you see they're curving in too much, so let's first flip them normals again, Ctrl N, and then let's add another edge loop, Ctrl R, then to push this about there. Let's first bring this up, something like that, and then let's add a smooth shading into this. So yep, so this is what we have. Now we can go to edit mode, select that, Shift D, duplicate, move it to this, to that. Make sure it is dead center, somewhere like that. Can select everything. You can just select the first mesh, hit Shift S, cursor to selected, go to edit mode, then hit full stop to move your to move the rotation point, then Shift D to duplicate those buttons, and then R for rotation, and then 90 degrees. Let's see, 180 I think. Rotate 180 degrees. Yeah. So we have the top part finished. So let's go for the lower part. We can add a circle. Make sure there are not too many vertices. Let's say 32. Something like that. Go to edit mode. Let's extrude a bit, because you see this has some depth to it. So extrude X. Something like that. Then X in the Z direction, extrude in the Z direction. Then Z, something like that. And then can go to the bottom, extrude again, make sure you don't have you don't have the cursor as your scaling point. So extrude, then merge center. Now if we add a subsurf modifier to this and turn on smooth shading, you can go to the bottom here and add a vertex there. So we have something like this. You can see this is just a flat plane. So to give it some depth, so we can add another modifier, add the solidify modifier to that, so that this has some depth. But you see, we are getting this black shading around some parts of the vertices. To fix that, let's first hide these buttons by selecting them and hitting H. This usually indicates that there are some duplicate vertices around that area. So, and what we can do is apply the mirror modifier. Select that circle, hit E, and extrude in a bit. That will remove that weird shading. Extrude in a bit, and that's what we have. Now we can Alt R, hit Alt R to bring back the buttons. So just you see there is some space between the buttons and the holes. So to bring that back, go to edit mode, select everything, and change the pivot center to individual origins, and then scale them, because you see now they are scaling each element separate from each other. But we only want them to scale in the X and Y plane. So hit S and then Shift Z to do that. So I think, yeah, that's what we have. And I think we forgot to extrude this here. Okay, so this is what we have. And then let's look at how to add this here. So just select the object, go to edit mode, add a loop, think around there, and another one around there, and another one around there. And let's bring this. So I think it's about this from here, then from here to about here. If you hit GUID twice, you can move the vertex along that the loop is on. So we can do that. So double key, hit GUID twice, and then so this is 1, 2, 1, 2. So we have something like that. Now if we select these, hit I to insert, you can see the shape is starting to come. Now we can extrude inside to have that, but you see the shape, the curves here are a bit curved. The curves are a bit curved. The edges here are not sharp enough, so we can add another loop here to make them sharper. And if you want this to look sharper, you can just increase the subdivisions, but I think 2 is enough. And we need also to add another loop for the inside, like that. And I think that's good enough. So let's turn off the subsurf for a bit, so that we can start working on that earphone jack. So for that, select these 4 vertices edges and then subdivide them. It will create this shape. Then let's make sure that it looks like a kite or a rotated square, so something like that. And we can delete this the middle vertex. If you have subsurf on, it will always look, though it is like a kite, when you have subsurf on, it will always look like a circle. So we can extrude this inside. So then add an edge loop there. Now we have that. If you want, you can first delete this and this here. We can add, to make the circle more detailed, have more detail, we can cut this like that, and from here add another cut there. Make sure you're not adding an extra vertex, that you are connecting it from one vertex to the middle there, to the center. So let's also, let's first turn on subsurf and see here to there. Okay, maybe let's switch this off and see. From there to there. Make sure you're not adding any extra edges, vertices there to there. Now we have that. But now when you have subsurf on, it becomes a diamond shape. So you can select this edge loop and then hit Shift Alt S1 to turn it into a circle. So something like that. And then you can go to front mode and make sure that this follows the curvature of our shape of our speaker. And let's make sure that this is a circle. By the way, make sure you have in video this pivot point changed to median point, so scale X. So what I'm doing here is making sure that we have a perfect circle, but by making sure that these points are at the same level on every axis, on their axis, on different axes. So we have something like that. And, now we can see it's about there. Extrude and add another loop. So we have that. And for this section here, you can do the same thing. Just use the knife tool to draw the shape of what we want, and now we can connect these to different vertices. Now we can delete this. So it seems there is two here, so that extrude. And we can select these vertices. But I think this up to here, this up to here, this up to here, and this and that, this and that, and use Ctrl B to give them some bevel so that those corners are sharp. Corners, I think those are too sharp, so let's try this. Think that's much better. So you can come in and make some needed changes here if it's going too deep inside. Now you can choose to be as detailed as you want, so you can just get this, duplicate it, can bridge. Bridge that, and add more details there as you want or as you wish. But for now I think that will do. We can, what else can we do? I think now we can go to the unwrapping part, the UV unwrapping, and let's see how this would look. So let's begin with the top part. There are different types of ways to UV unwrap. So UV unwrapping in basic terms is just a way of painting, of creating a mesh or a 2D layout of a 3D object. So it's like if you have a box and you want to paint on different parts, on different faces of that box, but instead of painting on the object while it's in a 3D shape, you cut out different parts of that box so that you can lay it down as a flat surface and then paint on it as a 2D surface. So yeah, So if you select the mesh and hit, make sure you have an image view, a UV stroke image editor view somewhere, and let's remove that. You can, if you hit U and then unwrap, you can turn the selected faces into a 2D flat surface, like you see here. So what we can do, we can also maybe merge, because this this texturing, since all these textures are appearing from above, what we can do, we can merge these buttons to this shape by selecting them, both of them, then hitting Ctrl J to merge them in the center. So let's make sure we have solidify on, and then now we can hit U, and instead of using UV unwrap, we can use projection view, so that we have everything, all of the selected mesh, so that we have a projection, a top projection of the UV, of the object's UV. And then for this down here, I think because we're only going to have this logo here, we can also use a front projection. So project front. We can't use that. We can use a cylinder projection because it's a cylinder. So now let's see how that turns out. So we can go here and find the Amazon logo, PNG. So I've just done some basic UV unwrapping, just so that so that this tutorial is not too long. So let's find the Amazon logo. So let's go with this. And make sure you find a PNG version. I think this one has transparency, and let's get this there, and if we subdivide this and change this to the node editor, we can give this a new material, and we can change this to materials, and we're going to be using the principal shader. So let's add that and disconnect this, and add a texture, image texture, and add the image. Make sure it's the Amazon transparency. So let's go to front, and you can scale this so that the logo only appears where you want it to appear. So you can also scale it in the y-axis. So I think around that. But you see, they're all duplicated. This doesn't matter because we can change from repeat to extended, and when we go to rendered mode, let's turn this camera to let's select everything and make sure that this is facing the logo is facing us. Maybe let's move the camera a bit closer. let's also make sure that this is above our grid. So if we go to rendered mode, you can see the logo is there and it's not repeated. But right now, every other part of the material is black, so and we don't want that. What we can do, we can duplicate this and add a mix shader. Connect this and use the alpha of the texture as the factor, and we can change. Let's switch this. You can see that's what we have. So now we can also add an HDR image for our lighting. So use nodes, go to the world node editor, then add an or you can just go to the materials editor here and then switch to the world editor, and from the color select environment and select find an HDR image to use for your lighting. So let's get this. So we can also change the color management from default to filmic and film log, and we can also use high contrast if you want. So we need this to be reflective. Let's go back to material editor, change the roughness to about that. Let's change this as well. Let's turn back to our reference. See, so it's quite reflective, so we can reduce that. You can reduce the roughness, and maybe let's change the HDR image to see how it would look on a different HDR. Let's try this here. You can see there are some reflections there. So what else we can do? Let's try giving this a metallic look. Increase the roughness a bit, something like that. Now let's go to the top buttons, to the top side, switch this to principal shader, select that, reduce on the roughness, and so for these icons, what you can do you can create the texture using Photoshop, but I don't want to do that because that will make this video even longer than what I intended to. So let's try finding some logo textures, icons. Let's find, can we get away with this? Let's go with these. So you can just create a set of textures like this, a set of icons in Photoshop like this, and import them into Blender. because our object is already unwrapped. Let's go to object. Let's go to material mode. Add an image texture. Add this image as our texture. So what is called free. So right now I'm not seeing anything. What we can do is again make a copy of this and add a mix shader. Connect this there and use the alpha of this as a factor. Let's swap these around. And now what we can do is if you go in the objects in the materials tab, we can add another texture, another material, and use the same material as before, and go to edit mode, select all the buttons, then Ctrl L to select the attached vertexes, and then assign that material to it. So we can go to the first material and remove this image texture. Is that it? Remove the image texture. Make sure this is okay. So we made a mistake. So do the same steps, but before you delete the edges, the image, make sure you click these two so that it's no longer linked to the first material. And now we can go to the first material and then delete these images, the image texture, because we want the buttons to have a separate material from the other face. So you need to assign this material to those buttons, and you can see they have the icons there. Now you can go in, select any button you want. So select this, and you can put it on top of any of the icons you want for that button. So if I want that, I can do that. For this, you can use this icon here. If they are flipped like that, you can just rotate this one here, and it should be fine. You can use this. There. Can yes, so that's how you add you add basic textures in Blender. So if you want to change the icon colors, because we used an alpha image, we can just disconnect this and change the color directly here. Let's see. So you can have them like that. Now if we go to rendered mode, see, we have that. Yes, so that's how you make the Amazon Amazon Echo in Blender. So if you found this useful, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.